This is part 9 of how the indigenous nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy laid the blueprint for one of the most agriculturally rich landscapes in the Northeast, and how that foundation gave rise to one of the most prominent wine regions in this country, the Finger Lakes. So in the last video, we talked about how Washington sent Colonel Van Schaick out toward the Onondaga territory to carry out the first strike of his plan, which was to neutralize the Onondaga Nation, who were seen as the political and spiritual center of the Haudenosaunee government. So on April 21st of 1779, Van Schaick departed from Fort Stanwix with over 500 troops from the Continental Army, moving swiftly and secretly through Oneida territory to get to Onondaga Castle. And when the Onondaga found out that American troops were actually advancing towards their territory, most Onondaga warriors withdrew from the village, and historians suspect that they actually went to Oswego, because this was a British military post on Lake Ontario, and it was just a place for them to sort of regroup under British protection. But Van Schaick was too quick. By the time the warriors had fled, the village was left largely unprotected, and what remained was a village of families, women, children, and the elderly. Despite the lack of protection of these vulnerable populations, Van Schaick still continued with his orders and burned everything to the ground. Approximately 50 longhouses and homes were destroyed. Large quantities of corn and beans were set on fire. Cattle were put down, and 37 people were taken as prisoners. And despite explicit orders from his superior, James Clinton, for the soldiers to not assault Onondaga women, Americans still committed numerous atrocities during this expedition. Soldiers unalived babies and assaulted women, with the exception of younger women, which soldiers actually raped and had their way with. And when Van Schaick returned back to Fort Stanwix, he didn't lose a single man. George Washington actually praised his conduct, claiming that he had brought the highest honor to him and all of his men. So now the first part of this mission to strike the head was complete. The Onondaga Nation, who were the keepers of Central Fire, were compromised. Now Sullivan and Clinton were able to finish what Van Schaick had started upon Washington's orders.